Ursula Lentine, and we have a guest here, Mark Pendroy. The way. What is the way? The way. Everything and everybody seems to have a way. If we start understanding the way things are in that particular avenue, so for instance, the way of the spiritual path, there's certain things, bizarre things that happen along the way. When we start understanding the way of something, we can understand how to appreciate it, how to have compassion with it, with ourselves along the path. Babies have their own way. The night has its way. And today's topic on the way of the spiritual path is the way of death and dying. We're trying to understand what is it like to face death. What is it like to be with the way of dying, the dying process. Very intense information, very intense thing to look at. Most people don't even want to talk about it, much less feel it or experience it. I have some history working with hospice for 2 years, so I'm very comfortable in the conversations about death. I'm very comfortable with death. I'm not afraid of death. I'm looking forward to my own death, which is kind of bizarre, yes, I can tell you. And we're here with Mark today, who is in the dying process. And the dying process is happening every day. My Uncle Frank said to my dad when he was dying, my dad said, "Frank, I'm dying." And my Uncle Frank said, "So am I, Sam. We're all dying." And it kind of put him off a little bit, like, oh, I guess it's not a big deal. Because there's the one guaranteed thing in life is that we're going to die. There's just no way around it. And facing it and talking about it and dealing with the process is very difficult. So you had a 6 month, maybe you can last 6 to 11 months. And that happened, what'd you say, 24?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So your number's up, number's been called, and we're standing in line. And I think a part of the dying process that's difficult is the anticipation of the whole thing. And how it's like you're just facing it, and it's almost like a monster walking around outside the house. You know they're going to come in at some point. So we're narrowing it down to 3 of the difficult things that you're experiencing right now in your process, because everything's a process. The first one is noticing that other people are distancing themselves. So let's talk about that.
Well, I don't really notice it that many people have suggested to me, and I started looking for it. And when I started looking for it, I actually found it. And I realized that some people, everyone has their own way of dealing with death. And everyone has the right to make their own choice about how they want to deal with it. And quite oftentimes this is an interference with the other person because they don't want to feel that way. But I've noticed it so much more so with my wife. She has to demonstratively take the time to go, I need today to take care of myself today. I need to go get my fingernails done and my hair done or whatever. And because everything, unfortunately, in a situation like this where you have one member of your household with a stage 4 aggressive form of cancer, not to think that most everything in the family life is geared around me and coping with my illness and the side effects of the medicine that I'm treating the illness with. And so quite oftentimes that can be misunderstood by the cancer, the person who's living with cancer, because they think, well, you should be taking care of them. And it can just run into misunderstandings. So it's best to understand that you're the one that's really going to have to take the high road and understand that whatever's going to be done, you're going to have to do it. And you're going to have to allow her to have what she needs to take care of herself. Because at some point, she's not going to have you. And then that's going to be a rude awakening for her, and I'd rather she start to understand what that's like now so she can learn how to do that.
A lot of times in hospice, when I would be with the families, what happens is the sickness becomes another element within the relationship. So you have the
codependency.
right, but you have the husband and the wife, or the children and the parent, or whoever it is dying. Sometimes it's the adult child, but their parents are coming to care and nurture for them. What happens is the sickness is in between. So say the sick person has the disease or whatever it is that's causing them the process, and then you have the family member. The family member loses their relationship with the sick person, and they become the caregiver. So when hospice steps in, or when there's a process of care that's being taken care of by friends and other family, that piece can get taken away, and then the person can have their relationship back. So that's one version of how the sickness can start separating people and the family. The other thing is, if somebody can't take care of themselves, if they're not showering, if they're not going out in the sun, if they're not wearing clean clothes, they just lose themselves into the sickness, not into the person who's sick, but into the sickness, because they're fussing and this and that, like you said, the reactions of the medicines and the sickness going up and down in health and all of that. So it's very, we have to be so thoughtful to say, okay, the sickness is starting to take in account of our relationship. What do I need to do to take care of myself as the caregiver or as the family member? And then processing that person's emotions. It's one thing to be sick because you're sick and that's it. But on the other side, the person who's well, they have their own process of being with you when you're sick and understanding, like, hey, this is so not cool. We tend to have our emotions go way in the back corner and deal with what needs to be done at hand. But then later, there's this avalanche of, one, we lose our job as the caregiver. Two, we lost our partner or our dad or our mom or whoever it is. And we have a backlog of emotions that we've never even dealt with during the process, and a new process of the bereavement process. So I always say to people who are in families who are in this process of the dying process, that the family members need to do self-care, go see counselors, go spend some time outside in the sun, take a shower, do the things that they need to do to be full of availability. And then they can serve from that place, because a lot of people, they want to serve till they're just dragging on the ground, and they're going to be of no quality to the person. Mm-hmm. So when she says, oh, hey, I need to go take care of myself, and she goes gets her nails done, it's not that her nails are more important than you. She just needs...
Oh, no, I don't mind at all.
Exactly. But I'm just saying, for other people and other families in this situation, and even the people who feel guilty to leave the sick person for a few hours and go take care of themselves.
Oh, yeah, the ramifications are far-reaching. You never know, because the sick person starts to feel like, wow, I don't want to be a bother.
Right.
And so then I'm not going to ask. And then I'm not giving her the opportunity to serve me.
Yes.
And which is one of the points that we're trying to hit with all these talks, is the service work aspect of being able to give back to God and those about us, our fellow man. And quite oftentimes, if we think of ourselves as less than because we're a burden or whatever, because of the person didn't react right, and we start thinking, well, everybody's packing up and leaving because I'm dying, because the ship's going down. They got to save themselves. At some point, they got to jump off, and they know I'm going down with the ship. Yeah. So at some point, they have to rescue themselves. And I have to honor that with them and not keep demanding that, no, don't jump off yet. You have to stay with me to the bitter end. And, I can't start making those rules on how another person, just like I don't want them to make rules on how I deal with my own death. I don't want them to think that they, I lost my point. But anyway, I'm not meant to, my death is not meant to be an imposition for them.
Right.
And
I also think friends and maybe social circles and things like that, in a human way, right? In an animalistic way, there's a knowingness. So we kind of ebb and flow. They don't want to come over here and chit chat when you're trying to contemplate, like, what's my next move? Have I cleared my regrets? Have I asked for forgiveness? So it's always like this balance. It's a up and down, which is the second point of the difficulties that you were talking about, is the up and down of being scared and difficulties in this process. So to continue with your point, when friends kind of start pulling away, one, it's because they're afraid and they don't want to deal with it, or two, they don't want to catch what you have.
Or they simply don't want to deal with it the way we deal with it.
Exactly, they can't stand it. Or a third version, in the humanistic version that I'm kind of offering, is that they're honorfully stepping away, like gracefully stepping away, saying, this is a sacred time, this is a time for him to be with his super loved ones, I don't want to interfere with this process. So there's like understanding there's different versions and reasons why people start pulling away in the process of us leaving.
Right, and if it's a well-balanced person, they're going to try to view it in a well-balanced way and sort of entertain the thoughts and opinions of those close to you. Those people that you respect their opinions, you want to include them on some of your thoughts. So that way you're saying, look, this is what I'm thinking, and you can have it be corrected and say, look, here I am. Like I say, all these things are all points for people to misinterpret, for both the sick person and the caregiver to misinterpret. And there's a tendency to think of everything as so hard and fast, or all or nothing. Like, oh, this isn't like a decision on what color lipstick. This is a decision about somebody's life here. And so a lot of times they have a tendency to overvalue stuff and then not value it correctly. So it's very important that you watch very closely and entertain the ideas of others that you respect. So you're not trying to make these decisions just based on what you know.
Right.
And so there
like
is a certain amount of being scared that I obviously have to get help. I get help from you. I get help from other people. I have a lot of people helping me with this, which I was really surprised at. How many people had come forth to offer me assistance of any kind. And it was quite a phenomenal thing for me to feel that, as far as coming from a healing standpoint, to know that so many people are wishing for you to recover, and your life is important to them. And so you have a tendency to be able to get hold of that healing a little quicker than some others maybe. Any advantage you can get in this game, as far as understanding goes, is always a plus. You can't avoid, learning from just about everything that happens. And what happens for me is late at night, when I'm no longer, I don't have stuff that I have to do, or some book I'm reading, or some program I'm trying to watch on the internet or on TV or something. When I'm not doing that, when everything sort of slows down, and I'm supposed to slow down and get into bed, and I can't. I'm up pacing the floors, thinking about what have I left out, what have I not done, just all the things that one tries to do and tries to shove into and accomplish in their last days. And I'm fortunate because I don't really feel that I have a lot of stuff left that I want to do, or something, some bucket list or anything. I'm not enchanted by any of that. So it's, I feel fortunate in that regard, but I'm not, I'm just not taken by that urge to, I gotta do everything so much. For one thing, this is all just bull. This illusion that we're living in is all just plain, to put it simply, bull. It's crap. It's not. It's for entertainment purposes only. And even though we do stuff that has life-changing implements and stuff to it, but let's face it, we place a lot of store in stuff that really has no value at all. And so this waking up is trying to get rid of this stuff that's really in the way to begin with. So if we can get out of that, where all these things, this losing my sense of power, where that's not controlling my actions, you know. And when it starts to control my actions, that's when it's controlling me, and I have no say about where it goes. And,
Right.
and that's what leads me in that place where I'm up and down and I'm scared and I don't know whether God is the concept that I've come up with, or whether or not I'm going to be thought of as, God doesn't approve of what I've done with my life or whatever. And but I've always done what I felt would be helpful to those around me. So I think I'm on the right track. But again, I've fallen short so many times that I think, well, man, if he decides to hold that against me, I'm in trouble.
God.
Yeah. And
do you, I also noticed that in the process of dying, we go through a time of reviewing our regrets. So like you were just mentioning, like, oh, I don't know, I kind of messed up over there. And instead of God judging, it's for us to really say, is this forgivable? Is this just being a dumb human? Okay, I'm not the only one making mistakes around here. Can I forgive myself for just being a dumb human? And then I think that's a part of the review process of moving through our regrets. What do you say to that?
It's extremely difficult. This self-forgiveness thing is very hard because, as you and I have discovered, we are the ones that know everything about ourselves. And so it's hard for us to keep it secret from ourselves. And if we're any kind of honest with ourselves, and that's what I always urge in any of this work, is be honest with yourself at the very least, And then you'll find that it's much more easier to be honest with a lot of others. But try by being honest with yourself. And nobody's saying there's a right or wrong way, because God does not expect us to have omnipotent information for us to deal with. So when I did what I thought was the thing to do at the time.
Right.
I was guided by whatever forces, or I was not guided by whatever forces. And I did those things, and I've also done what I could to make amends for those things. In other words, the true amends is not sniveling about, I'm sorry that I hurt you. I'm saying that I've done everything I could to try to amend that. How can I make this right? I obviously can't do some things, but whatever I've done, if I've tried to make amends and tried to be involved in the amends process. Now, it's a process that does not happen according to our time. It happens according to God's time. At least that's what I was told, and I believe it. And that God's the one who decides when we get these opportunities to amend it. A lot of times we're just supposed to sit with it and understand it and try to learn from it. And then the truth will come to us about how we're supposed to try to make amends. And quite often in this fast-paced world, you're not making amends to the same person that you committed the offense to. So a lot of times you're making a general amend, but you've changed your behavior. You no longer do those. You no longer objectify women, whatever it is. You're no longer doing those things. You're no longer actively hurting or actively causing pain in the world. And you're changing the outcome of the whole big picture that way. Mm-hmm. Now, I can go directly to some people because I'm given that opportunity, but there's other people that I need to pay my respects to elderly women to ever pay this back. And so it doesn't matter what elderly woman. I pick some woman and I do a favor for her, and that's one of the ways. Or I find out if there's somebody I can't reach or can't pay back, or maybe there's a crime involved or whatever. I find out what way this person gave to their charities. And I find out what their charities, and I make a commitment to myself and to God to make certain payments until such and such amount has been restored back into the bank.
The karmic bank.
Yeah, and so I've put back, and that's available to be drawn on by other women or whatever group of people I've offended or done wrong. And quite oftentimes, I'm the person who's been harmed.
Yes.
You know,
Forgiving
and,
ourselves for the.
forgiving ourselves is another whole big leap, but it's what I say. That's why I insist it's a process, because you can't ever really get it all at once. Even Christ didn't get it all at once. You know, he talked about it and he complained about it to God, but he ended up just living with it. He ended up saying, "Okay, I've committed to go forward with this, and let's go on with it." And that's kind of the way I have to deal with this. Quite oftentimes, I forget that everybody that's ever lived on this planet has done this. Every single person that's ever lived on this planet has died. And so, unless there's some that resurrected through some weird means or something, but
Maybe just one.
yeah, I think it is one. As a matter of fact, last count. The bottom line is,
They've done it.
yeah, they've done it.
They've done it.
And I don't know whether they survive. I don't know what, but I'm going probably to march down the same hallway or whatever. And so therefore, what I'm being scared of is much greater men than me have done it, and much lesser men than me have done it. So I obviously think I'm equipped. And if I'm not, I'm still going to come out the other side probably.
So if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, I guess. I see that's not what I'm scared about. Because when I get scared, I get it. This is the other thing, is the dying person is very sensitive. When you get scared, you start to get apprehensive, your things start to get out of control in your thinking and stuff. And so you have to really calm down and reground yourself and recenter yourself on your original task, so that you don't get sidetracked on what your original goal was. Remember, is to go over these points and to be, to know what losing your sense of power is, and know what being up and down, being scared, and also have a network in place of people that are familiar with you and your case and can help you, and if anything, just listen to you.
Yeah,
and there are people that are really skilled in this area too, that we don't take a lot of. People don't talk about this a lot.
I know. It's
So
not in our
that's
culture.
Yeah, it's our culture is to deny it
Yeah.
and buy more stuff and spend more money on chemo or whatever it is.
Well, even the medical industry, they're not a hospice kind of mindful. Their job stamped into their brain from probably the first day of medical school, and every experience that they have is keep my patients alive, keep them well. So when we're naturally dying and someone's fighting to keep us well, that's a conflict of interest. Because then we start going, well, where's the agenda here? What's going on? So when sometimes like with my dad, for instance, he was in a dying process and he had cancer, and they kept, look, hey, we'll cut this piece out, we'll do this, and it was almost like it was a guinea pig. And I thought, what is going on here? Quality of life, where's that? Where's quality of life for my dad?
Were they palliative care people, or
No,
were they?
they were the medical industry. They were the chemo industry. And I say industry on
That's
purpose.
one-sided.
Yeah.
That's
well,
really one-sided.
and then we started realizing what's going on, and my dad was very like, I'm not dying. I'm not dying. And so the doctors are finally like, listen, we've cut this hole, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. So I think hopefully in the future the medical industry will have some more training on the gracefulness of saying, okay, sir, there's nothing more we can do for you. We're moving you over to palliative care. And when you said having a network of people around that can support the process, because it's new, like when we go.
So yeah, you're subject to listen to only them, and you do want to have an open forum for the information and the voice. And that's what stuff like this is for other people to hear, hey, there's other people facing these things, and there's other people actually starting an active dialogue around it. And can we do more of this? And can this benefit more people? Because it obviously has, because I think there's a hunger for it.
Yeah, there's a great need to understand the dying process and what's going on with us as we're dying, what's going on in our family as one person is leaving and preparing for the next place. And I think when we get the information ahead of time, there's a few different things going on. One, the anxiety rackets up way high.
Yeah, but it's actually, you know what? It's really a gift. It's really a gift to be able to get this allowed moment of retrospection and to look at yourself and to examine. Who was it? Some famous philosopher, not Socrates, but anyway, a life unexamined is a life not worth living. So it's like when we start to examine, death is part of life, especially in the situation where our environment is so in such peril, and so many diseases seem to be produced by our environment, and the fact that we seem to throw chemicals around like they're next to nothing, and now 1 out of 3 men are expected to get cancer by the time they reach age 70, so, or 65 or something. So it's like, what are we doing that's collectively leading us off the cliff, like the lemmings or whatever? And so there's a need for this information, and people are hungry for it. Is this the only choice I have? Is the choice that Bristol Myers allows me? And by the way, they want everything I and my family owns. They want me to surrender everything.
How so? What do you mean?
The money.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know that my bill has been, it's way over $1 million in 3 years. Not three. It's not quite 3 years, because it was 3 years on September 18th. September, October, November, December, January, February.
So 3 years and 5 months.
3 years and 5 months.
So
it's almost 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And we're, like I say, I wouldn't have done very well had I not included other people's information, because the chemotherapy department, the choices available to me for head and neck cancer were rather slim. And so had I not had some other alternatives that I could throw in there, and at least having alternative information, what this does, this opens up the path for other people to talk about this.
So what did you
Now,
do?
other people that may have more light to shed on than me.
What things did you do besides the medical route?
Well, I did, as far as eating and
Everything.
I adopted I'm from Los Angeles originally, and so I always had kind of a hippie diet, and so I was into good organic foods, and we went 100%, or tried to go 100%, and a lot of my wife's a nurse. Advanced degree nurse, so she was able to do a lot for me in terms of researching and interpreting the types of information that was available to me to use. And so I'm grateful for her ability to help me, guide me, and that was probably initiation for me, because I could talk about it with her, she could talk with all her friends and associates where she works, and she works for a real famous children's hospital here in Atlanta. You know, I mentioned to Ursula a movie that I had seen a number of years back, where Stevie Wonder played a disc jockey in a community college radio station out in the middle of the desert in Arizona or Utah or someplace. And anyway, he's being chased by all these police officers. He's transporting a vehicle across the country, and he's breaking every law, so he's being chased by all these, and they chase him into the desert, and he keeps going straight across the desert, and Stevie Wonder's, in his inimitable voice, is saying, "You can't beat the desert, Kowalski. You beat the state of Illinois and all these other cops that are after you, but you will not beat the desert. You can't beat the desert, Kowalski," is what he keeps repeating, and it's kind of like that's the ultimate blow of powerlessness, is when I was told I had months to live. and it completely changes how you see the world and how you see yourself in it. So it's really important, this dialogue, and I really wish that I could extend to you, if nothing else, the need for you to press on to try to get more information, and do not surrender to the disease. Let yourself be a force against this. And when you unite with others, like we're trying to get going here, you have the tremendous opportunity of being much more powerful than you are by yourself. And believe me, a terminal diagnosis can make you feel alone like you've never felt. And but you don't have to be. It's only a feeling, and it does not have to be.
And I think also in that aloneness, kind of socially within our friends and family, it moves us into a spiritual connection, as kind of the design is meant to do, right? Because when we're time to say goodbye to everybody, we pull away, we say goodbye, we say thank you, we have moments of appreciation. Even if you're leaving a party, you're like, bye everybody, I had such a great time, thank you for welcoming me, you're so meaningful to me in my life. So we kind of say goodbye, we have a breath of appreciation for what a great night it was, and then we turn and we walk out the door to go be by ourselves at home or with our family or whoever. But we're moving from a greater mass into a more individualized mass. And when we go home, I call dying going home. When we get to go home, we don't have any more pain, we don't have any more bills, we don't have any more list of things to do. And it's a time of connection, of peace, of belonging in a greater scheme than we could belong at any party. And we belong to ourselves, we belong to our story, we belong to possibilities, we belong to the greater consciousness. When we're getting ready and prepared to do that, it's sacred work. And I notice with you, you're doing your sacred work every day. You're reading your spiritual books. You're really listening to people when they're in front of you. You're being fully present. You're having compassion with your process, the ups and downs, people pulling themselves away, the ups and downs of being scared and dealing with that. Dealing with the desert from the Vanishing Point movie. You can't beat the desert. You can't beat... Okay, it's coming. Fine, it's coming. Moving into a place of acceptance, which you are. You've clearly expressed that. And just...
That comes and goes, by the way, so don't look
Right.
for it to be a constant
Exactly.
switch. You can turn it on and off.
And the third point of losing your power. So physically, mentally...
Especially if you're coming from a place of power before the disease hit you. Mm-hmm. If you were a particularly powerful person that was able to accomplish his goals and is usually not accustomed to failure. Those of us who are tuned into success more can really feel the loss. They say it's really hard for stroke victims who were powerful men in business to recover because they're so used to having so much power, and to have all that power removed abruptly can be really disheartening to anybody of any kind, whether you're a hairdresser or a water system worker or a big famous lawyer. It doesn't really matter.
But that's a spiritual path. So dying in itself could be a way of the spiritual path. Having a stroke and having all of our power stripped from us is another way of the spiritual path. There's so many ways of the spiritual path, and so many ways of living a life of quality, even though we're leaving.
The divine knowledge has a way of presenting itself. What's really come to each of us from a divine point, and that's what's so special about it, because it's kind of been filtered by this altruistic thought behind it that it's hard to pollute it. And so anything that comes from the divine is liable to work divine type of references attributed to it, because of the power, the inherent power that lies in us having this dialogue is they don't want us to have this dialogue, because more this dialogue happens, the more the opportunity comes for someone to pop up with a cure, and not be sold out and sidetracked or murdered or whatever they do to keep stuff from us. And I'm one of those people that kind of firmly believes in that where money is concerned, the corporations of America know no boundaries as to what they're capable of doing to increase their bottom line. It's a business model, and I kind of understand it, but it's also ruthless when it comes to denying people health, and I think that's what's happening here. And but it's not happening at this table or in this circle, and my wishes are that this will help this network to continue on. I'll be glad to contribute my services at any time.
So just to wrap things up, we are at the Way of the Spiritual Path show. This is M. Pendroy, and talking about death and dying, the process, 3 difficult things in facing death, around people pulling away, around being scared, the ups and downs of feeling scared. Can't beat the desert, and losing power, feeling physically our power is leaving, our power over things, our ability to keep a job, all sorts of power, sense of power is taken away, so we can embrace a new power, a deeper power, deep within inside of us that Mark is demonstrating very beautifully. And any closing remarks on?
No, other than I wish you all well, and I hope I've been able to contribute. And, any efforts to contact me by whatever means are, I'll be glad to be reached by whatever's legal or legitimate for this outlet. But I'm honored to be asked to contribute, and I'll contribute again. And again, it's really about, what do you want? What do you want to create for tomorrow? And that happens by what you do today and the thoughts you have today. You can actually plan your wake up tomorrow morning to include this in your prayer, to your thoughts on the day, to start your day, and to try to let the negative things only be there for a lesson, not there as anything else. If you can learn a lesson from it, then it's positive. And try to look for the positive in it, because that's the only way you're going to find it. They're not going to dress it up for you. So you have to look for it. And I believe that you can find it. We've found it in like I say, it's all in brief measures. Some days you get a lot of it. Other days you get next to nothing.
Right.
And other days you get an extraordinary amount that you can't see how you could possibly have been privileged to such information. And other days you'll be surprised that you didn't get nothing. But the chances are you get something out of it by the sense of knowing that you're moving in the right direction. And you're moving in the direction of truth and honesty, which is really what we're all about when it really comes down to it, because we all have to honestly face this fact. And the sooner we get it through our head that it is what it is, I think the better off we'll be. But I think I've said about as much as I can organize.
Okay, all right.
But it's been my pleasure.
So thank you for joining us on the Way of the Spiritual Path, and hope you continue joining us. Thank you.